Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Israel Hawkins. Jeff, we have quite a few interesting articles today to report on. We have the murder rate increasing in Texas, of course. United States deal with the issue dealing with North Korea. The pharmacy compounding plants are having a little bit of turmoil from the FDA, as well as problems in the agricultural field. We're going to start our report off tonight with our field correspondent, Larry McGee, as he tells us a little bit about these murders that are taking place throughout the state of Texas. Larry, what seems to be taking place?
An Abilene man was killed overnight in his home on the city's south side. Local police have detained the suspect, and they say the murder occurred sometime at night around the 2900 block of Bickley Street, but officers weren't notified of the incident until around 8 the next morning. 34-year-old Ricky White has been charged with murder in the case, and reports are that he moved in with the victim approximately 2 weeks ago. He was apprehended at an apartment complex on the city's south side. The victim's family says they knew something was wrong when Anderson didn't show up for work, which is totally uncharacteristic of him. Aaron Cash, the victim's son-in-law, conveys that he rushed over to Anderson's home as soon as he received word of the tragedy. He says Willie Anderson was a good man who did not deserve to be murdered. Some with families on Bickley Street are beginning to become concerned with their safety in their community, while others are content to believe that local police are capable of effectively addressing the area's rise in crime. Details have yet to be released concerning how exactly that Anderson was murdered. Mr. White's criminal history, however, includes 2 convictions for family violence. And in an even more disturbing demonstration of malice this week, emergency crews wheeled multiple victims off campus, and at least 14 were wounded in a knife attack at the Lone Star Community College near Houston. One student reports being on his way to the college's library when he saw a young lady who was part of the student security team run past him holding her neck. According to the student, she had been severely cut along her face and jawline. Police have detained the 21-year-old suspect concerning the incident, and the sheriff reports that he is in fact a student, and they believe he acted alone. Earlier, alerts had been sent to students via the internet and phone, asking them to get to a safe location. This is the second time that violence has surfaced in the Lone Star system of higher learning. Another student was arrested in January after a shooting that injured 2 people on a different campus. Investigators have yet to announce any suspicion as to a motive in the case, and have yet to release any reason for the assault. But for a growing number of people, the motives for the murder and malice increasing in the big country can easily be summed up in 2 words: bad character. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Doesn't seem like there's much hope on the horizon, I'll tell you what. Now, if you own or operate a compounding pharmacy in the United States, beware. So far, the FDA has made 31 surprise inspections in 18 states. What did they find? Conditions that could cause a risk of contamination in all but one of those pharmacies. Now, this is on the heels of a meningitis outbreak that took place just 6 months ago, Jeff.
Sarah Sellers, a consultant for the pharmaceutical industry and a former FDA inspector, said concerning the recent findings, What we're seeing now is a much more systemic problem that has to be considered in both the state and federal legislation moving forward.
Over the last 2 months, inspectors report finding black particles in vials of injectable steroids, rust and mold in clean rooms, as well as tears in workers' gloves that expose their skin. Ms. Sellers said, "I think what we're seeing in the wave of inspections is that producers of sterile products are not meeting federal sterility requirements, and that's a vulnerability."
Currently, the FDA does not have oversight over compounding pharmacies, although the FDA can step in. The states do, and the compounding industry doesn't want to see that change. In a statement from the industry's trade group, it said the FDA is using inappropriate standards, and this sudden and legally questionable change in standards does not further public safety.
FDA Commissioner Margaret Hamburg, in an interview with 60 Minutes, said that some pharmacies were reluctant to cooperate with the agency's latest inspections, to the point the FDA had to obtain a warrant to enter these facilities and to perform their inspections. Lawyers of the compounders question the timing of these latest inspections, and they see this as a power grab opportunity from the federal government.
A House subcommittee will take up the idea of expanding the FDA's authority over compounding pharmacies.
Now, classified information has slipped out on Capitol Hill, revealing that the U.S. intelligence now believes that North Korea could have the ability to launch ballistic missiles armed with nuclear weapons, which of course raises the stakes between the United States and the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
For decades, North Korea has been labeled a rogue nation by the U.S., but there is a growing belief among officials that it is a genuine threat. Now, near the end of a hearing on the defense budget, Congressman Doug Lamborn surprised everyone, including the Secretary of Defense and the Joint Chiefs, as he read an accidentally declassified piece of information from a DIA, a Defense Intelligence Agency report.
Lamborn read, "DIA assesses with moderate confidence the North Korea currently has nuclear weapons capable of delivery by ballistic missiles. However, the reliability will be low," he concluded. North Korea is known to have enough material for about a dozen weapons, but until now, no intelligence agency has said that they could make one small enough to put on the tip of a missile.
When the North tested a nuclear test here recently in February, it boasted that it had a miniaturized device in addition to its launch of a long-range missile last December, capable of reaching the U.S. Joint Chiefs General Martin Dempsey said, "The absence of concrete evidence to the contrary, we have to assume the worst-case scenario, and that's why we're postured as we are today."
According to the U.S., North Korea appears ready to launch 2 intermediate-range missiles, and the U.S. has, of course, positioned missile defense ships in the Pacific to intercept them, although the top commander says he does not intend to shoot unless they are headed towards targets on land. Now, intermediate-range missiles cannot reach the U.S. mainland or Hawaii, and there's no indication that they are currently, at least, armed with nuclear warheads.
President Obama also spoke regarding North Korea, saying North Korea has to quit making threats and the U.S. will take all necessary steps to protect Americans. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is heading to South Korea to present a unified front with South Korea, both diplomatically and militarily. If North Korea strikes South Korea or any U.S. ally, the U.S. will step in to defend them.
Secretary Kerry's message is that there is an alternative to armed conflicts, but the U.S. will not negotiate with North Korea unless it gives up its nuclear program. Now, of course, if it refuses, Kerry said there will be consequences in the form of punishing sanctions, which we've seen in times past that has never worked.
Doesn't work. Now, for the last 8 years, the bee population has been dropping steadily. But according to commercial beekeeper Larry Pender, this year is worse by far. Mr. Pender lost close to 3,000 beehives this past winter, leaving him with only 1,800 hives. These remaining hives are hired out to pollinate fruits, vegetables, and nuts on 70 farms across the West, including farms near Los Angeles, California.
According to a recent interview with CBS, Mr. Pender stated each hive has somewhere around 30 to 40,000 bees in it. All of a sudden, we open up the box, and there's no bees in that box. None, he says. The bees become disoriented and can't find their way back to their hives, and they die in the fields.
Nationwide, beekeepers say they've lost on average 40 to 50% of their hives. Pender blames a new class of pesticides, neonicotinoids, based on nicotine in wide use since 2005. He stated, when we put our bees next to fields that they use the neonicotinoids, our bees die. Now, earlier pesticides were sprayed on crops, but these pesticides can be coated on seeds and actually infused through the plant as it grows.
Wow. When CropLife America, the largest pesticide industry group, was asked whether bees were harmed along with the insects neonicotinoids were designed to kill, they said, ongoing research and field studies have consistently found no adverse effects on colonies when neonicotinoids are applied according to directions.
At UC Davis, Eric Moosen studies bees. He says they're under assault by numerous agricultural chemicals. The honeybees are operating in a toxic soup, he said. All these chemicals that are out there that we don't know how they interact with each other. It's too many stresses and it's overwhelming, and eventually the bees finally give in. They die.
What else can they do, right? Pender lost $500,000 last year, laid off 5 of 7 workers, he said, and he says he can't survive another year like that. I can't wait for scientists to prove something does or doesn't work. I can't wait for the regulators to take their time because we need these bees now, he said. The EPA is currently reviewing this group of pesticides, but doesn't expect its studies to be completed, Jeff, for another 5 years.
Wow. By that time, all the bees will be dead.
And the food that they pollinate along with it.
Well, we go from bees dying to the crops wasting. It's prime season for Southern California strawberries. The weather is perfect and the fruit is ripe, but a lack of farm labor means the fruit is falling to the ground and wasting. Edgar Terry surveyed his Ventura County fields and sees fruit on the ground because he doesn't have enough workers to pick them.
Wow. He can't find farm workers, even though the most productive worker can earn as much as $30 an hour during peak season. In a CBS interview, he stated, right now, we have about 70 to 75 workers, and we need about 100 for this location. So he says we're about 25% short today.
Wow. This year, the Western Growers Association anticipates 15% fewer farm workers in California and Arizona. Now, those states grow half the country's produce. In Catan, most U.S. farm workers come from Mexico. The Growers Association says the worker shortage is due to the rise in deportations and the difficulties in crossing the border.
Yeah. So why are unemployed Americans not filling these jobs? Terry says, well, if you go back even 70, 80 years, it was very, very difficult to get unemployed American workers out to work on the farm. For some reason, our type of farming here in California, people thought it was beneath them to come to work in the field. Basically, 100% of our workers are farm workers from across the border.
Wow. Terry continued, if Washington doesn't come up with a better way to import farm labor, the U.S. will be importing more food. When Terry was asked what he would like to say to the lawmakers in Washington, he said, come out here and harvest strawberries for me. You'll probably be more productive than what you're doing in Washington. Now, Terry is closely watching immigration negotiations in Congress, hoping he is going to get some more farm labor. At Catan, it's pretty sad state of affairs when you have unemployed Americans not willing to humble themselves, come work in the field, but those who would come and work can't get in this country.
Yeah, give it a hard time.
Well, Yeshua Hawkins has been both preaching and publishing the only true answers to the world's many problems brought about by the rejecting of Yahweh's laws. You can read for yourself what simple, basic changes mankind would have to make to stop these curses from overtaking the world.
Now, to find out more information, you can contact the House of Yahweh and order your free copies of the monthly newsletter and the Prophetic Word magazine by writing the House of Yahweh at P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas, 79604. Or you can call them at 1-800-613-9494. You can also visit them on the web at www.yahweh.com or www.yisrohawkins.com. And of course, you can email them at info@yahweh.com. And all calls outside the United States, please call the number on your screen.
Don't go anywhere. Up next is Yeshua Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.